的 Freedom to Marry 的领导人伊芬·沃夫森在1984年的哈佛大学法律系博士论文开始倡议同性婚姻的平权制度。
I'm so honored to be attending such a grand gathering. The promotion of equal marriage rights for all is both a lofty and lengthy project. Evan Wolfson, the leader of Freedom to Marry in the US, first began to advocate for equal marriage rights for same-sex couples in his doctoral dissertation at Harvard University back in 1984.
到了2015年的6月，美国的宪法法庭通过全美国都能实施。在此之前，美国仅陆续有17个州实施同婚平权制度，他们费时了31年之久。
It took 31 years until the US Supreme Court would legalize same-sex marriage nationwide in June 2015. Before that, only 17 states out of 50 had allowed for marriage equality.
我在亚洲的台湾呢，自1986年向国会请愿立法通过同性婚姻法案，到了2017年的5月，台湾的宪法法庭做出必须要有同婚的合法保障，同样费时了31年之久。
In Taiwan, Asia, back in 1986, I first petitioned Taiwan's Congress to pass a same-sex marriage bill. Like Wolfson, it took 31 years for our constitutional court to rule in May 2017 that Taiwan must grant the same legal protection of marriage to same-sex couples.
所以31年的时光，绝不是巧合的数字密码而已，而是上帝主宰人类的神给予人们争取平等自由考验的最长期限。
31 years is by no means some magical number, except perhaps as the longest period given to us to endure, to fight, and to be tested as we strive towards greater freedom and equality.
因此，各国争取同性婚姻合法的制度，需要的就是一位有远见的先锋，像乌特阿什和其他在场的同志们，和个人及企业的开启行动的时间的起点。
What each country needs in the struggle for marriage equality are visionary pioneers like Utkarsh and others here today, and a starting point for action for both companies and individuals.
但是作为一个先锋，绝不能只靠一时冲动的5分钟热忱来成就如此远大的目标，而是要有类似3个同心圆的环节关卡。
Being a pioneer doesn't mean you can rely on 5 minutes of passion to achieve lofty goals. Instead, we need to be able to pass through 3 concentric bottlenecks to action.
最中心的一环是敢不敢，就是自我认同程度是否会随着外界的打击、否定，产生自我的怀疑，既是自信心不足，极易半途而废，打退堂鼓。
The most central of which is, do you dare? Meaning, whether your confidence in your own self will bolster you from self-doubt when others question or attack. A lack of self-confidence can make it easy to give up halfway or back down.
当自我拥有坚定认同的信念后，第2个环节关卡是能不能。有一些人虽然敢，勇于承担重责大任，去 come out 面对无情的社会，但是周遭的朋友、同事、同学、师长、邻居、客户，全都在强力的阻止。
When you are confident in who you are, the next level is, can or can't you? Although some people dare to take on such a heady responsibility, coming out in the face of an unfeeling, at times, society, one's friends, colleagues, classmates, teachers, neighbors, and customers can all act to hold us back.
因为不愿意见到他在革命行动中受到伤害、打击，甚至丧失生命，如同美国同志运动的名人旧金山市议员 Harvey Milk， 还有黑人民权运动领袖牧师马丁路德 King Jr. 皆是遭到枪杀身亡。
Not wanting to see us hurt, or perhaps even fearing for our very lives, like what happened to the LGBT movement leader, San Francisco City Gay Councilman Harvey Milk, or the civil rights movement leader and pastor in the US, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
但是若是一个人敢了之后，也没有任何能阻挡的能了。第三个环节关卡也是最大最重要的一环，会不会？因为同性婚姻平权改革的目标涉及的层面非常广泛，不是懂些皮毛知识就能成事。
If a person dares, and there's no one holding back their can-do, the third step is the biggest and most important. Will or won't you? Because the goal of equal rights when it comes to LGBTQ plus marriage equality involves wide-ranging facets. It's not enough to just know a superficial level of knowledge.
30多年前，媒体朋友很是好奇，怎么任何有关 LGBTQ 的千种质疑、万种挑衅，都能被我轻易的破解。于是整理出我能精通的专业领域，居然多达25种，包括历史、法律学、医学、心理学、行为学、哲学、经济学、军事学、文化学、语义学、犯罪学、教育学、社会学、政治学、文艺学、新闻学、广告学、民族学、统计学、宗教学、谈判学、符号学、动物学、流行病学、环境生态学等等。
More than 30 years ago, my friends in the media were very curious how I could address so easily the thousands of doubts and denials people had about the LGBTQ plus community. So I sorted through the various professional fields I needed to grasp to reply, including history, law, medicine, psychology, philosophy, economics, military science, culture, semantics, criminology, education, sociology, politics, literature and art, journalism, advertising, ethnology, statistics, religion, negotiation, semiotics, zoology, epidemiology, environmental ecology, and more.
很可惜的是，我的缺点就是我的语言能力不足。
Unfortunately, my one weakness is language ability, English.
各国或多或少都有正式成立跟非正式的 LGBT 社会运动组织或者社团，以及商业公司的关注。
Pretty much every country today has formally established and informal LGBTQ plus social movements, groups, and organizations. Companies are vocal advocates for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging.
但若要缺乏各个专精领域的人才及知识，徒有喊一些口号，反歧视、反霸凌、要尊严、要人权，只会是事半功倍的校长，甚至是徒劳无功。
But if there is a lack of talent, knowledge, and attention to all the various specialized fields needed, shouting slogans, anti-discrimination, anti-bullying, dignity, human rights, this might just result in twice the effort for half the result, or even having been all in vain.
基于今天有超过300人在场参加，群英荟萃，我们已有一个良好的开端。
With more than 300 people in attendance today, talented across a range of expertise, we are truly off to a great start. 一定要聚集前述那么多种的专业领域人才，
共同合作，集思广益，提出有效率的行动策略和手段技巧，才能早日迎来同婚平权的合法美好结果。
So what we need now is for talent from across these professional fields to come together and work together, to brainstorm and come up with the most effective actions, strategies, and methodologies so that the awesome result of LGBTQ plus equal rights and same-sex marriage, that beautiful day, can be ushered in as soon as possible.
最后，敬祝全体与会贵宾健康、快乐、平安。
To close, I wish each of the distinguished guests here today health, happiness, and peace. Thank you. My boss is right there. So we're ready to move on to the next extension of the marriage conversation. And this will be our plenary panel on marriage equality and its effects on LGBTQ plus inclusion in the workplace. As we gather here in Bengaluru, it's crucial to recognize the fight for marriage equality is not just a matter of human rights, but a significant business imperative, as Maury and others have already shared. In 2015, when the US Supreme Court was considering its own landmark marriage equality case, over 379 major corporations and employer organizations filed an amicus brief in support of marriage equality. Businesses argued, quote, organizations are engaged in national and international competition for talent, customers, and business. That competition demands teamwork, and teamwork thrives when organizations minimize distracting differences and focus on a common mission. To reap the rewards of diversity, employers need to be able to recruit and retain top talent equally, in part through equitable and competitive benefits packages. The business case for LGBTQ plus marriage equality, when it comes to talent and markets, has resonated across borders, including here in Asia. Let's review some recent developments before we start our panel discussion. As we heard from Jiawei, Taiwan made history in 2019 by becoming the first territory in Asia to legalize same-sex marriage. Business was a key ally, again, with Taiwan Semiconductor, Acer, and other firms coming out in support, with TSMC saying, supporting same-sex marriage aligns with our commitment to creating an inclusive workspace where all employees feel valued and respected. Nepal, as mentioned, has also leapt to the fore. After years of litigation, in 2023, Nepal Supreme Court ordered the legal registration of same-sex marriages, with Justice Til Prasad Shretha noting, it is the responsibility of the state to make laws for same-sex couples to enjoy equal rights as with other couples. And on June 18th, 2024, just last month, Thailand passed a historic marriage bill legalizing same-sex marriage, making it the first in Southeast Asia and only the second in Asia to achieve full marriage equality, and that bill is set to go into effect by the end of this year. According to Thailand's Department of Trade Strategy, under the Ministry of Commerce, the legalization of same-sex marriage will bring significant economic benefits to the country, with Thailand's pink market already worth $7 billion annually. Here in India, despite the marriage ruling of October 17th last year, which declined to legalize marriage equality, we've seen widespread and increasingly vocal support from the business community. Many multinational and Indian companies have been at the fore, advocates for inclusion and marriage. Keshav Suri, executive director of the Lalit Suri Hospitality Group and a prominent LGBTQ rights activist, powerfully stated, quote, "The fight for marriage equality is not just about marriage. It's about dignity, respect, and the right to love without fear. We may have faced a setback, but our resolve is stronger than ever. The business community stands united in this fight for a more inclusive India." But not my microphone. Okay, it's back. Thank you. Companies including Tata Steel, Godrej, and countless others, many here today, have implemented LGBTQ+ inclusive policies and benefits, setting an example for others in the corporate landscape. These businesses understand supporting marriage equality aligns with their core values and helps them attract, motivate, and retain top talent. Meanwhile, marriage advocates here haven't given up. The Supreme Court of India was going to hear review petitions just last week regarding the 2023 judgment. Petitioners argue the judgment failed to provide legal protections to queer couples despite acknowledging the discrimination that they face, stating this was a failure to uphold fundamental rights. The journey towards full marriage equality in the Asia Pacific is ongoing, with countries like Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines showing signs of progress, one day more than the day before. As business leaders and advocates, we share a crucial role in this movement. Let's use this plenary panel to share insights, learn from each other's experiences, and chart a path forward that combines business acumen with a commitment to greater inclusion. So I'd like to welcome to the stage our panelists to talk on this crucial topic, and they're going to introduce themselves, and then we're going to explore what's happening in the region and what does that mean for the LGBTQ+ community. Thank you.
Numbers out of 720.
So let's welcome up now Shane Mills, Senior Analyst, Customer Care, Pride Employee Resource Group, Lead for Asia Pacific, Japan, and China at Dell. We're very pleased to have Chase Robles, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Community Business, and Utkarsh Saxena, petitioner and lawyer for the Indian Supreme Court marriage equality case. Very soon to be a success as we work together. So welcome. Welcome everyone. Thank you. So we have a lot to discuss. I think let's start off the conversation by doing a self-introduction, names, pronouns, your role at your company, and then we'll go into more details. So why don't we start here?
Hey, Namaskara, Bengaluru. My name is Shane Mills. I'm also known as Malika Mills. That's my social media name. And my pronouns are she and her. I'm a transgender based out in India. I'm located in Hyderabad. I've been working with Dell Technologies for 14 years, and that's myself.
Great, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jace Robles. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a cisgender, bisexual, neurodivergent woman, and I work with community business as Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Glad to be here.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Utkarsh Saxena. My pronouns are he, him. I am the founder of a nonprofit called Adalat AI, which builds tech solutions for our courtrooms to expedite justice. I'm a lawyer and economist by training. I don't have a base. I live out of a suitcase, but try to be in Bangalore as much as I can. Pleased to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have so much to discuss, but we're going to also try to get back on time. Let's start with, why is marriage equality a business issue? And since there's been so many twists and turns with the Indian marriage ruling, and then it going back to being reconsidered potentially this year. Maybe Utkarsh, you can start. Talk a little bit about what happened last year, how you see things going forward, and why is that a business issue, marriage equality?
Right, I don't need to tell this room what happened last year.
Yes.
I think everyone knows what happened last year. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court declined a petition. There is a review petition pending. I don't want to get too much into the legalities, but it's essentially you go back to the same bench of the same court and say you committed an egregious error, which is so grievous that it's apparent on the face of the record. That's the standard that you use. And we are arguing that before the bench and waiting to see where that goes. After last year's experience, must only be cautiously, very cautiously optimistic. But I think as Dina was saying earlier, we're so close socially and legally that if the Supreme Court doesn't come on board, honestly, I think it's their loss more than the communities, because I think India is ready, and now it's just when the court realizes that and wakes up and smells that reality. Right. On why marriage equality is important for business, I think one, and as an economist, I think of this first from a macro lens and then a micro lens, right? From a macroeconomic perspective, there are now studies after studies that show that there is queer brain drain because societies don't accept queer people. Those numbers range anywhere from 0.75% of your GDP to 1.5% of your GDP, depending on whether you read a World Bank report or a World Economic Forum report. There was a recent BCG report that showed that as a result of legalization of marriage equality in the United States, about $150 billion of market value was created. So whether you look at it from a macro perspective or also within the firm, within an organization, the more open and inclusive you are, the more you allow people to be themselves, the more their talent flourishes and the more the organization benefits from them. So I think for both those reasons, it's obviously very important. But if I could just flip that question on its head, because I'm in court and I'm always looking at society and business, how is business important for marriage equality in that battle for civil rights? Because people think these operate in silos. But the pushback we often get, even from the courts, is society is not ready. We are not ready for this. And I think that's why leaders like you can really make a point, make this more visible, make it optically more conspicuous in society by embracing it, talking more and more about it. For those judges, for those courts who live in their ivory towers, I'm trying to be polite, to realize that society's moved on, that our businesses have moved on, that queer couples are prevalent, are a part of our social fabric, and we are all waiting for the courts and our institutions to wake up. So it's a feedback loop, it's a symbiotic relationship. Marriage equality is important for business, but even on the civil rights side, I think business can make a big difference in making it more visible for people to notice and legalize it.
Yes, yeah, I think that's a great perspective. And when you look at the countries that have legalized marriage equality, business support was usually a catalyst or a tipping point, or certainly something that was considered as one of many considerations in that in those rulings. Maybe let's pass it off to Shane. From your perspective, why is marriage equality a business issue?
Yeah, why not a business issue? Yeah, what is marriage exactly? It's an exchange, a transaction between two bodies, two minds. End of the day, it's two humans. And this August 31st, I'm going to take 20 years with my partner. And we were partners way before transition. And that's when I was out of college. I was finding a job, trying to be in a company that recognizes me. And today, we are successful partners. I was able to get a house loan because my business accepted me. I'm happy because my business accepted me, and we are happy because my business accepted me. So end of the day, if you have a happy couple, you have a happy workplace, and you have a happy organization. So it is a business issue.
Yes. So next question, and I think this is so crucial. How do cultural attitudes towards marriage equality influence workplace inclusion efforts? Of course, we're all part of a society, we're part of a culture. When I was young and there was no country in the world that had legalized same-sex marriage, I would tell people, I would like to have a civil union, same-sex civil union, but not same-sex marriage, because same-sex marriage seemed too radical to me, even though I was gay, because there was no country that had same-sex marriage. So I thought, I can't even support that. So, you know, the culture, the context that we come in, that impacts us. Maybe we can start with Jazz. How do these cultural attitudes impact marriage equality at work, and what does that mean for this movement?
Yeah, in more than 10 countries in Asia, being LGBT plus is a crime. But in all other countries, it's not. It's neither legal or illegal. Therefore, the attitude of people in the workplace can really be dependent on the culture or the societal norms, whether that's based on traditional family values, the tons of religions and the beliefs that exist in the different countries, the concepts of merit or demerit or being ashamed to one's community, especially the concept of not wanting to stand out, collectivism as a concept versus individualism, and how that's very important in Asia. And what that means is an individual's well-being is hugely dependent on their relationship with their families and their communities. So it's important to understand both the drivers and the barriers of marriage equality, which have been discussed a little bit earlier. For instance, in Thailand, revenue and LGBT tourism is actually the main driver. There's a roadmap to a pink economy. And in the Philippines, while it's still a long way to marriage equality with an anti-discrimination bill impending for 24 years now, that's coming from religious factors that are influencing our politicians. In Singapore, decriminalization came with a price. In return was an agreement to amend the constitution to ensure marriage is exclusive to its traditional sense. So learning from these barriers can actually help create an alternative position in the workplace to help create more advocates and allies.
Yeah, that's a great comprehensive answer. Thank you. Utkarsh, what would you say for the cultural attitude? Because you said when you're at the court, that's a factor, right? They're thinking, is there a certain amount, percentage, segment of society where we could go forward, or are we still hesitating because of that cultural norm?
Well, I think like any society, Indian society is heterogeneous, it's diverse. There are parts of it that are open and accepting, there are parts of it that are resistant. But culture and attitudes are evolving. They're a dynamic concept. And I think for my learning from at least the marriage equality battle has been that there are two parts of culture that can be incredibly powerful instruments in shaping views and transforming an equality. The first is language. It's incredible how alienating and exclusionary speaking in English and having this debate and conversation in English can be, and how powerful it is when, say, my partner and I do interviews and conversations in Hindi, which is our mother tongue, or other practitioners do it in their mother tongues. It opens up audiences that you otherwise cannot access. So I think one priority in that cultural conversation is to be a lot more conscious of language, so that the next time the government files a reply in the Supreme Court, they hesitate before saying this is an urban and elite conversation. And it's not like this conversation isn't happening outside urban areas. It's just that maybe we don't have access to it. Because if you look at the literature and history of the movement, the earliest activists were from the most rural parts of the country who didn't know what LGBTQ plus meant, right? And so I think that cross-pollination between the cultural centers is important. And the second thing that I try to do more is making this an indigenous movement, grounding it in our history and reminding people that this is actually a process of decolonization that prior to colonial rule, India was actually much more inclusive to queer rights than many other parts of the world. Before this became an acronym or a movement, this was a way of life, whether it's our temples, our scriptures. And then it's much easier to rebut this Western culture, import, corruption of society argument and reclaim the conversation and say that actually you are upholding outdated Western values and we are trying to reclaim our past.
Yes, yes. And you know, I think that also goes for corporate policies, because a lot of times HQ might have a policy, it's in English, it's applies to everybody, but it's not in local languages, it's not understood to be rooted in the local leaders or the local management, and so people feel, oh, this is just something that we can ignore, or this is just something that's window dressing. It's not really being implemented. So I think that's so important. Having lived in China for so many years, everything we did was in Chinese or bilingual at most in that context. Next question. For marriage equality's impact, what is the importance, you think, when it comes to workplace programs and policies? What's the importance? What's the impact? In the US, there are so many benefits tied into marriage specifically. There's more than 1,000 federal and state benefits there that are tied into legal marriage. So, but of course, there are also ways to give those benefits, many or most of those benefits outside of legal marriage. Maybe we'll start with Jez and then go on to our other two panelists. But what's the significance of marriage when it comes to employee morale, engagement, and what companies can do for same-sex couples?
Yeah, definitely. Whether we like it or not, legislation has impact on social acceptance and stigma reduction. For one, not having marriage equality leaves the community at the mercy, if I may say so, of the companies to be providing equal benefits, and seeing the DEI backlash in other sides of the world, we know very well how this can be taken away just like that. So when we know that we have laws to anchor on, we know we have something to rely on other than ourselves. In other words, one way of even looking at it is we become not the sole advocate of our lives, and that's something bigger, is defending our right to live our lives. It's not just on us as the community or on our allies. We can also start viewing our lives very differently. For example, I was born and raised in the Philippines, where, again, marriage equality is not something that I see happening in my lifetime. And so as I was growing up, forming how I see myself and my future family is very different compared with now that I live in Thailand, where marriage equality is in the horizon. I can definitely have a different perspective on how my family can look like. Because it's not only about the law, it's also about the services that I can provide. In Thailand, fertility options are actually available for us, as opposed to the Philippines, where back in the day when my partner and I were trying, getting reproductive health support was actually deemed medically unethical, just because of the culture at that time. So it builds confidence and it encourages us to speak more about ourselves. If there's marriage equality, I can also think of it in a different way, that I'm not asking for anything special anymore. I'm not standing out anymore, which is important. I'm just here, and I'm just like everybody else.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. Shane, same question to you. What do you think the impact of marriage is on employee morale, on employee engagement? What's the impact you think that will have, or the negative impact when we don't have that?
It definitely has a huge impact, because practically being in a relationship and working, in an organization, there's small little things that matter, right? Like your leadership asking you, how is your partner doing? Things like, I need a leave, right? My partner's unwell, that matters. It's important, right? Because this is something that is not accepted by the country, but you have a partner and they need you. And many things also does matter. For example, I would say your workspace has to be ready and prepared, to welcome this relationship. It's not always a heterosexual relationship. We also have anniversaries, we also have a family. I support my family and he supports his family, and I support both the families and he supports in my family. So they have to be respectful for that. My father-in-law is unwell. I need an emergency leave. They're like, how can you have a father-in-law? Things like that. You're transgender, I have a partner. Is he also a transgender? Those misconceptions, that people have in the mindset. I know we are growing. I know as leaders we are educating and creating that sensitization. But end of the day, we don't want huge wedding gifts or something like that on our anniversaries. We just want to be accepted is what, makes the change.
Yes. So next question, we'll go back to Jez. What specific steps can organizations, companies take to consider marriage equality when they're thinking about DEIB? Because it's very different in a country where there is legal marriage equality versus no legal marriage equality, and then going down the ladder, maybe there's criminality, it's not even legal to have an LGBTQ identity, and multinationals have to operate in many different markets. All at once, so.
Yeah, in both countries that have it and don't have it, reviewing all family-related policies and benefits is important. Instead of going by the market trends, really look at your internal policies and go one by line item, and see how they can be provided in a gender-neutral way. We all know this already, LGBT plus specific trainings, either fundamentals, advanced, or community specifics, with the intention of changing everyday behavior, are really very important, including everyday use of inclusive language. I remember it made so much difference when I joined a team, and my team member, who I know was heterosexual, was referring to their husband as their partner. That was an immediate on switch for me to signal that this is actually a safe space. So the intent of having trainings to change behaviors every day is very important. Finally, where you are able to demonstrate public support to either marriage equality or any LGBT-related legislation, also helps. Although I understand it's easier said than done in this region, there are different ways, like doing it together with inter-industry networks and diversity and inclusion networks that exist. Because when you do it together, you know that you have a louder voice than if you do it individually as an organization.
Yes. Utkarsh, would you like to add to that? What are the steps that companies can do to be supportive, even if there's not the legal structure to offer those benefits of marriage?
Yeah, I think law and society are in a kind of tango. Sometimes the law is taking the lead in that dance and passes laws and decriminalizes. And sometimes it lets you down like it did last year, and society has to take the lead and show law the way. And I think the eventual goal of all of this, why do we spotlight LGBTQ plus issues, is because we want this identity to become irrelevant in a sense, right? It shouldn't be a marker in some sense. The true day of liberation will not be when I'm identified as a gay lawyer, but just as a lawyer, or when my relationship is not a queer relationship, but just any relationship. So we're seeking relevance today for an irrelevance in the future in some sense. And for that to happen, I think businesses can really help take the sting out of these relationships. The more we mainstream them, the more we normalize them, the more we support them, the more we provide a safer and conducive environment for these relationships to thrive, the more they will come out in society and the more they'll catalyze social change. I think a bunch of policies, I'm not from the business community directly, but I think one thing that I think about a lot is that I know a lot of people who are not phobic, but are just ignorant. And I think there's a little bit of a difference there. They're genuinely curious to learn, to understand. They just haven't had exposure. And I think a business setting is a pretty empowered setting to help those people understand that conversation. Why do we want pronouns to be important? How has the trans community been battling this for so many years? What does it mean to be in a queer relationship? And for all of those things, either through company perks or regular conversations, is I think the way to do it, to let it flourish within a business and then eventually in society, for the sting to take out and then the law to take notice and act on it. Yeah.
Yes, and I think what you said about a lot of people just not knowing, needing to have more information about this community. Many years ago, when I was organizing China's first LGBTQ job fair, one of the HR directors, a Chinese lady, said, "Can I ask you a question? It might be a little awkward." Pull me aside. I said, "Okay, sure, ask me anything." She said, "Well, when there's two men, they're gay, which one is the man and which one is the woman?" And I said, "Well, that's like you asking the chopsticks which one is the fork and which one is the knife." And she said, "Oh, yeah, that's true. It's hard to call it one or the other." So, and she had no ill intention. She was just curious. I think she can Google that answer for more details. But I liked my humorous reply, but I think it's important to keep the communication open. We shouldn't be afraid of having awkward conversations with people who are not ill-intentioned, especially. And one more point to corporations being changed when there's not the legal structure. In China, there's of course no same-sex marriage, and HRDs would say, well, how can we offer the same-sex benefits because for example, the insurance company needs a marriage license for me to offer the same-sex benefits to same-sex couples, but we don't have legal marriage in China, so we can't do it. And it was another big MNC who was at the table. They said, we talked to the Chinese health insurance company and we said, you extend this to same-sex couples, we'll come up with a criteria that's not the marriage license. You agree to this, offer it to the same-sex couples also, or we're gonna find a different company to provide all of our benefits. And the company said, okay, and they worked on it, and a couple months later they said, okay, we changed our policy. For you, we'll also extend it based on this standard. So, it's definitely it's up to negotiation, I think, with the power of our corporations. Let's go on to another question. What's the role of ERGs in advocating for the benefits associated with marriage? And what role do they have in sort of educating companies or even advocating inside companies for those benefits? And maybe you can share that because I know you've been a vocal voice within your company.
Great, yes, ERGs play a very vital role. Me personally being an ERG lead for APJC, and ERG is the voice for the community in your organization, and companies that do have ERGs, great job you are doing, and companies who don't have it, please get one. Okay, what happens is this group is constantly working in creating that sensitization and that safe space. As an employee, I've been working with Dell for 14 years, and we started our ERG in 2018. I never knew that we could do something like this until and unless I was a part of a gay parade, and where I met my gay friend, and he said, Shane, you've been so loud outside in the community. Why don't you do some work for the company, for the organization? And that's how we started an ERG chapter. And that's when I got exposed to D&I leaders, and I knew that it is okay to transit. It is okay to be what you are, and that gives you the power to your employee, and that's the reason why I am sustaining for 14 years, and that's why this group creates that eco space for the community because not everybody would be out and open, because as Utkarsh said, there are social restrictions we still have, so much of pressure from the society and acceptance that we rely on these small groups where we can voice out our issues that we go through in an organization, be it with your manager or be with your resources, and there are many more things. So ERGs is definitely a power, and great job to the Pride India team. It has been my great strength and help throughout.
Great. Jez, do you have any good examples? Of course, before community business, you were working for, I think, one of the really the pioneers corporates in this space. What do you think, what have you seen in that company or in your new role, sort of interesting ways maybe that ERGs are advocating, or how can companies best structure the ERG so that you're really getting feedback, insights, you're getting role models to draw in more people to be a voice, to be a mentor, and push that positive change inside companies?
Yeah. This was actually how my diversity and inclusion journey and now career started. I was with IBM for 14 years, and when my partner and I reached a point where we wanted to start our own family, we were thinking that in the Philippines, we don't have the legal support. But thankfully, in a company like IBM, they value Pride networks, and they worked with us in terms of deploying equal benefits, and that was 8 years ago. Where were we 8 years ago? Were we even talking about diversity and inclusion? I don't think so. But that when we were able to do that, I thought to myself, let's not just stop within IBM. All companies in the Philippines should have this. And so that started for me to be active in the Philippine Financial and Inter-Industry Pride, where we helped other companies, and now on our 11th year, still helping companies deploy equal benefits in a country that doesn't have marriage equality. And so from a structure standpoint, it's very important that the Pride networks are informing your D&I strategy, and leading organizations even go into proactive discussions where they involve the Pride networks in, for example, annual benefits reviews. The annual D&I strategies are also created through ideation from the different communities, and that's how you know that your approach is local to your company and your industry, because you can't just copy and paste either from global or from the market trends. You have to be really very specific to your industry and to your company.
Yes, thank you. We have one more question for the panel, and then we're going to wrap up and get ready for a tea break. So the final question is on allyship, because if you look at the number, there's different estimates, surveys of the LGBTQ plus community, anywhere 5, 10, 20%, but most people are not going to be members of the LGBTQ plus community. So how can we cultivate allyship? How can we cultivate allies? What's the importance in your eyes? And what's the best way to have those conversations with people, like we said, that might have questions, not understand? Of course, everyone's perspective is different. But what's the best way to have those conversations, build those allies, and have a structure even in companies to come together? Maybe we can start with Utkarsh on that.
Right. I think, unfortunately, even in a courtroom, a queer person arguing for queer rights is not as powerful as a straight person arguing for queer rights. It shouldn't be like that, but that's just how it resonates, because the straight justices or the straight opposing counsel, then they think it's a conflict of interest that I'm arguing for myself. Obviously, you're going to be biased. But there are others in the community who understand what they're trying to say and make them question their own openness and curiosity. And I think it's a very powerful vehicle to have that conversation, to not have you talk for yourself, but other supporters talk for yourself. To your question on what's the right way to do it and get more allies and have that conversation, I think one thing, and I tried to talk about this earlier, is and Anna told me this, and I thought it was very powerful, is that if they ever ask a question or betray ignorance on something related to the queer community, it feels like they're being put to a test. The minute you fail the test, you will be accused of being phobic, and that creates a chilling effect and shuts them down. And it's unfair for us to shoulder the responsibility for an ignorant person's openness. I totally understand that. But unfortunately, I think that's required. That therefore, if you do encounter ignorance, that's coming not with an ill intent or in bad faith, but in genuine ignorance. I think having that open conversation, not making them feel like they're being tested if they're progressive enough or liberal enough, and being open and vulnerable about yourself, your life, is the best way to do it. Something that I started doing personally more is, I'm a lawyer, I argue in courts, so it's very easy for me to intellectualize the issue and talk about the law and the constitution and society and history and make these arguments. But nothing is as powerful as humanizing the issue, and that's why my partner and I now try harder to put our story out, because people haven't seen queer love stories. So this month, you mentioned your 20-year relationship. My partner and I have been in a 16-year relationship. This month is our 16th year anniversary, which was a very private affair typically, but we put a post about it, tweeted about it. Lots of people messaged us, and only so that people see more and more queer relationships. So I think the way to get allies is open this up as much as possible, give it more oxygen, allow ourselves to be more inviting, and allow their curiosities and engage with them, so that I think we humanize the movement and make it more relatable for them.
Yes, that's great. Shane, what would you say about allyship and maybe within your company or just in your experience? What can companies do to bridge that maybe gap of knowledge or comfort or understanding?
Yeah, allies play a very vital role, and I would say thank you all allies for always being there. I'm an ally to the heterosexual people, I'm being very honest. I listen to all you girls out there. I listen to all your secrets, okay? And all you guys, I listen to all your pain, okay? So I'm an ally to you, so you better be an ally to me.
Thank you.
And allies also play a very, very important thing, and this is important for you all to listen, because you can save a life. Trust me, you are a life savior. You're that person from Baywatch, okay? Because you do not know, as Dina said, there's so much of trauma that we go through. 20 years and 16 years is not an easy walk. Trust me, it is so much of uncertainty, even right now. There is so much of uncertainty that we are living in, And we are happy, and we are not only giving competition in business, also in relationship to all you heterosexual people. So and it's all because of you allies here again. So allies, we need you.
Yes. I think if we can wrap up this panel conversation, it's that there is a legal framework, there are benefits that come with that, and there's a movement for equality that will continue, and I'm confident one day we'll be successful. But regardless, as corporates, as business leaders, we have the power to really have that same positive impact through offering the benefits associated, creating places where people feel safe, welcome, and actually are treated equally and inclusively. And that's up to all of you. So I'm sure we have a bright future ahead from the corporate side. So thank you again, and thank you all the panelists for this conversation.
Thank you.
Or in that fight for inclusion. Out and Equal is the great convener of that energy.
Companies in today's environment really need to own their authenticity. They need to own their values. They need to own how they show up in the community.
The relationship that EY has had with Out and Equal has really helped us to grow our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Whether it's the best practices from an ERG perspective, a benefits perspective, or even just meeting other companies.
So what I've seen is that they've helped us accelerate our journey in making sure that our workplace is such that people from the LGBTQ+ community feel welcome feel visible, feel respected, feel valued.
It's really amazing to know that there are spaces like this where our communities are not only being heard, but also have this opportunity to have this sense of belonging.
It is so important for us to visibly support, encourage, love our people, and demonstrate that we accept them as they are, for who they are.
We are actually supporting companies in creating optimal organizational culture, which is what we call the business of belonging.
Being part of Out and Equal brings us a lot of prestige and a lot of clear engagement of my company in defending LGBT rights.
We actually want diversity. There's a reason why we push for it. We know that that makes healthier companies. We know that it makes more successful companies.
Out and Equal helps me to flesh through, like, how do we impact these systems? How do we teach leaders how to lead from more of a space of openness and inclusion? And gives me like really practical, tangible tools and resources that I can tap into to help my organization show up in a more powerful way.
I cannot quantify the impact that Out and Equal has given, not just in the US, not just in the UK, but globally as a whole.
Whoever found Out and Equal and built the partnership, well, I'll be forever indebted to. It wasn't me, I can't take that one. But the minute we did, we never left.
All right. Wow, what an inspiring and incredible video. It always gives me chills. But this is what our partnership does. And thank you, first of all. I mean, you might actually recognize some of those stars in this room here, so go say hi to them later on. I do want to say that as somebody who grew up in India, and now I'm in the US, I'm an Indian origin lesbian, but this is unthinkable. I did not even have the word lesbian when I was growing up. Forget this kind of an audience and this kind of a gathering. So it gives me great queer joy and pride to be here today. So, and as long as I don't fall. So thank you all for being here. And I do want to do a quick round of applause for our partners in the room here. Thank you. We do what we do thanks to your partnerships. So my name is Deep Joshi. I go by they, them pronouns. I'm Director Partner Success here at Out and Equal. And I joined Out and Equal a year ago. But one of the things that, as you know, Out and Equal is a leader in LGBTQ plus equality and advocacy. And this room, it's like preaching to the choir if I say the importance of that, right? So I won't go into that. But what I did want to say was, as somebody who has spent 20 plus years in corporate America, and been a DI leader and a Pride ERG leader, I understand the needs of our partners and what you all do, right? The work you all do matters. That's what happens. That's what makes change happen. And yes, we are doing great progress. There's a lot more work to do, as we all know. So what I would like to offer is having understanding what the Indian needs are. We have a custom offering that I would like to chat with you about if you want to become a partner of Out and Equal. That's what I'm here for. Flew all the way, fighting jet lag, but this work is important. Totally worth the lack of sleep. So I will be out there at the checkerboard. Please come and say hi. Even if you already are a partner, come and say hi, give me a hug. And let's continue this good work, right? And thank you again for all of you for being here. We are going to take a break after this incredible morning session. There's lots more to come. So let's take a half-an-hour break. We're a little, like 10 minutes running late. So let's take a half-an-hour break. We're going to break these rooms into 3 breakout rooms for our master classes. So come back at 10 past 12. Akriti is saying 12, so we say 12. So Akriti is the boss. So let's come back at 12, network, make connections, and just celebrate each other. Thank you so much.
Not hetero. How will you react? That shook me. That's when I realized I'm not an ally. I'm probably just a bystander. You know, these are questions that hit you like a rock and make you feel what you're doing may not be enough.
Question, where it's difficult to speak up. I remember there was a time when there was a group of mothers, and one of them was talking about that she's so happy that her son has a girlfriend. Okay, and if it would have been before, like, many years ago, I wouldn't have said anything. But then, after I chose to be an ally, I was fairly vocal, and I did say, sorry, what do you mean by that? No, I didn't mean anything like that. I said, yes, but whatever you meant, you have to spell it out. And what if my son is gay? If you are being very thankful that your son is not gay, if my son is gay, how will I ever, mix around with all of you and say that my son is gay? And it is very important to, like Veena said, educate and build on your knowledge. And again, psychological safety for everybody is important. During my earlier days, and I'm from Patna, Bihar, and we have a typical way of talking in Hindi. Okay, we say, hum ye karte hain, hum ye khate hain. And my initial days in Delhi, everybody would make fun. Hum matlab kaun aur kahan hai? Okay, you are a Bihari. You don't look like one. And I would say, why? Bihari have horns? No, you don't look like Bihari. So for many years, I would not talk in Hindi because people would make fun of my Hindi. And that was an environment which was not psychological safe for me. I couldn't be myself. And the journey is tough for everybody, okay? But it's important that we acknowledge it and speak up. And thanks to Professor Emmy that she gave this research. I'm not sure how many of you are aware about it. Google ran a research on psychological safety a few years back. And the results were, you can Google and get the results. It really spoke about why psychological